All right, welcome everyone. So today what we will do is we will actually build Active Directory domain controller. So in our previous lesson, we saw how can we configure RAID for fault tolerance. And today what we will do is we will also learn about Active Directory. We already covered the concept of Active Directory, that what is Active Directory, where do we use Active Directory, and what are the benefits and what can we do with it. So that is one thing that which we already did, and today we will see it in practical. So as you can see, this is my primary domain controller for San Francisco. So this is for San Francisco that I have. Let me change the name so we know it. So for okay, it's not doing it. That's fine. So I will do what I will start it. Once we start it, then we will see how can we actually install a domain controller. Let's just say that you are working for a company. In your company, you do not have any server, and your manager comes to you, or you want to actually make sure that all users are logging in through Active Directory, and you have centralized administration, you have control, and so on. Um, so basically what you can do is you can install Active Directory services and you will be able to accomplish that goal. Alright, so in order to install Active Directory, what you can basically do is you can click on Start menu, and then in here we have this option called Server Manager. So Server Manager is basically the console from where we install all of our roles. Like any service you want to install, you will always come to Server Manager, and from Server Manager you will be able to do it. So in order to install Active Directory, we can simply click on Add Roles and Features and then click on Next. Once you click on there, you see that you have two different options. What are you doing? Role-based or feature-based installation? Remote desktop service installation. So we are not doing any remote desktop installation. We want to install Active Directory role. That is why we will select role-based installation. We will click on next. Once you click on next, now it is asking us, where do you want to install it? Where do you want to install it? We want to install it in our uh, KDS um, FODCO1. This is the name of our server, and this is the IP address. Alright, yeah, I am going to install it on this server. If you have multiple servers and you want to install it on any other server, you just have to choose. But for now, we only have this server and we want to install Active Directory on it. So we select it and we press next. Once you press next, you can see that you have many different roles like DHCP, DNS, fax server, Hyper-V, remote desktop, web server. Which one should I select here? What do you think? Which one should I select here? Should I select DNS or DHCP? Which one? Which role are we installing here from this list? We are installing Active Directory domain services. So we learned about Active Directory, right? So we will choose Active Directory domain services. Once you click on it, it is telling me, hey, when you install Active Directory domain services, these are different features that will be added. Do you want to add it? Add features. That's all you need to do. And you can see when you select a role, it gives you information. Active Directory domain services store information about object on your network. So you see, you have the explanation here. Press next. Once you press next, these are the features. These are different features. So the features are part of a role. We will not touch anything here because we are not installing any additional feature. we will say next. Once you say next, now you can see that it is just giving us some information like Active Directory domain services store information about users and computers, which we already know, right? Things to note. Things to note. It is telling me in order to make sure that there's no outage, install minimum of 2 domain controllers. We will learn how to install additional domain controller, because if this domain controller goes down or something happens to it and you don't have any other domain controller, what will happen? Your users will not be able to authenticate. Your users will not be able to log in. So that is a disaster. That is a disaster. That is a big problem if your domain controller is no longer working. That is why we need to have at least 2 domain controllers in a company. If you are working in a company, always make sure you have at least 2 domain controllers. Correct? And it is also telling us Active Directory Domain Services requires DNS. DNS stands for Domain Name System, right? It resolves name into the IP and IP into the names. We will learn about DNS in details. Press next and then click on install. Once we say install, it will start the installation process, and when the installation process is done, we will see what other steps we have to perform in order to complete the Active Directory configuration. Alright, we will see it now. Let's wait. Alright, so the installation is done. Close. Do you think Active Directory is ready? Do you think it's ready? It is not ready. Active Directory is not ready, right? Because we only installed the tool. Now we have to configure it. If you see here, you have this warning option. If you click here, you see it is telling us configuration required for Active Directory domain services. Promote this server to a domain controller. We have to promote it. If you do not promote it, this is not an Active Directory server. You cannot use it. Alright. So when you click there, you have how many options? Add a domain controller to existing domain. Add a domain controller to existing domain. Add a new domain controller to an existing forest. Add a new forest. Which one should I select here? Because we do not have any existing domain or forest, we will choose what? Add a new forest. And in here, I will say kd.local. You can type any name. KD is my company name, right? KT is my company name. That is why I am using it. But if your company name is different, if your company name is Walmart, if your company name is any company name, you simply just type it and then .local. .local is something that I am using because this is a local domain. This is a local domain, that's why I'm using .local. But you can use .com, .us depending on your requirements. I will say next here. Once I say next, it will start checking to make sure there's no duplicates. Alright, so if you remember, I told you about Global Catalog the other day. Global Catalog stores all the attributes, all the informations about our domain controller. DNS is required. DNS is one of the requirements, because if you don't have DNS, your domain controller is not going to work. because that's how you resolve names to IP address and IP to name. Now it is asking me that type Active Directory services restore mode. So let's just say that our Active Directory have a problem and we want to restore it, right? Whenever you want to restore and whenever you are in a restore mode, when you go into Active Directory restore mode, what password do you want to use? You can set a password here. So I will set a password. Always make sure you remember your password, because if you forget your password, then you will be in big trouble. In here you can see it is telling us select functional level of new forest. Forest functional level, domain functional level. We have server 2016, 12, 12, 12, 8. So if I choose 8, what does it mean? It means that I will have all the functionalities that is provided within 2008. So we always choose the highest. Not always, it always depends on our requirement, but if it's highest, it's much better because you get good features, you get good options, you get advanced features if you have higher. If I have it higher, I will get higher feature for my forest, I will get higher features for my domain. Like I will have more attributes. Next. And DNS, we are not configuring anything else about it. So in here what it will do is it will assign a domain name for us, which is KT. You will say next. And then now it is asking us that where do you want to install your database? So all your objects, when you create a user account, it will be stored in this location. Log files. Whenever there are warnings, whenever there are information, whenever there are information about the activities, where should it store it? It's in here. Sysvol folder, all your group policies, for example. So all your group policies. So when you create a group policy, you create like security settings on those group policy. All your group policy will go here. All right. I will say next here. Now it is telling me review. So these are all my settings. Review it. If you are okay with the settings, you can simply say next. And now it is going to check, validate, make sure that all your settings are correct. If you have any problems, you have any issues, it will say sorry, I cannot install. Go first, fix those settings, then I will do it. You see it says all prerequisites checked, passed successfully. So click install. So now when we click on install, it is going to start the installation of all different tools such as group policy. It will configure this server as a domain controller. You see it is going to install DNS and it will do a lot of other things as required. As you can see that it is now creating partitions. You can see it is setting up different options for us. Alright, so it is done. A restart is must. A restart is required. You can see that you are about to sign out. It will restart. So close, close here, close here. That's it. My computer is now restarting. So once it restarts, you will see that I will be able to log into the domain. Alright, so as you can see now we have the login screen, and this time when I do Control Alt Delete, do you see that change? KT/administrator. So KT is what? My domain name /administrator. So now I can no longer log in locally on this server. I cannot log in locally on this server anymore. So that is one thing that you have to make sure you know. So now this is a domain controller. So if I come here now and I click on, let me close this. If I click on Start and you see this Windows Administrative Tools, you can see that I have Active Directory, multiple Active Directory, but this is the one that we will work on, Active Directory, users and computer. So basically this is now installed. So all your user accounts, your computer objects, everything will be stored in this server, and you will be able to manage it from here. So you see this is Active Directory, users and computer, and if I double click, this is my domain name, and you can see I have different folders here. I have different folders here. So the very first thing that we will do as part of the best practice, we will create a good folder structure. Creating a good folder structure is really important, because if you don't have a folder structure and you have thousands of users, how are you going to find Umaid from finance department? If you have good structure, you will be easily able to find a user even if you have like more than 1,000 users. So that's why creating a structure for your Active Directory is important. I can quickly go and create user, but I have to create structure first. I have to do the best practices first. So in order to create our folders, how can we do that? So if you right click on it, on your domain, um, you see you have new, and then in here you have organizational unit. If you remember, we learned about organizational unit other day. Organizational units are like a folder. So they are like a folder. So very first thing that I will do is I will create the main folder. Knowledge Train is my company name. Protect container from accidental deletion. If you check this, you will not be able to delete it. So if I right click, I say delete. Yes, see, that's why we check that option. I will right click here now and then say organizational unit. So finance department. Press OK. See, now it is under knowledge train. And then I will say organizational unit users. So I will put all my users here. I will right click computers. I will put all my computers here. Right click uh, groups. I will put all my groups here. So see, that's how you actually create a structure for your folder. So now if Farhad comes to me and say, hey Parvez, can you find me Umaid, a user from finance? Now I will come here, finance department, users, Umaid. Here you go. But if I don't have this structure and all my 1,000 users are here, and he says, can you find Umaid from finance? I will say, hey, we have 5 Umaid in our company. I don't know how to find it for you. So that's why we need to have better structure. So we can assign group policies, we can do a lot of different things. Correct? So your homework is to pretend that you're working in a company, and you have to create organizational unit for 10 to 20 different departments and different sites. Like you have San Francisco site, you have New York, you have different sites. So let's see how will you structure. your organizational unit. So that is your homework. Install Active Directory domain services and then create a structure based on 20 or 10 different departments and different sites like in San Francisco, in New York, like in Afghanistan, like anywhere you want. So let's see how you will do it. So one last thing before we go, how do we create a new user in Active Directory? By simply right clicking on your organizational unit and then new and then user. Or you see we have a shortcut here. This is the shortcut. If you click here, it will create it. Right click, new user. Once you do that, it will ask for first name. First name is, for example, Omid, right? Last name is, for example, John. So Omid John is the full name. Now it is asking about login name. Login name is different. So login name will be the name that you will use to log in. Most of you have a Gmail account, Hotmail account, right? You have, right? Wells Fargo account. When you log into your Gmail, you say omaid.john@gmail.com. That is your login name. So you choose your login in here. So I will say o.john. So now Omaid, whenever Omaid logs in, he will use o.john. Press next. Now we will choose a password. We will choose a password. And in here it says user must change password at next login. What does it mean? It means whenever Omaid logins to his computer, he should change his password. So we will see it in practical. And then user cannot change password. So if I choose this, it means that Omaid should not be able to change the password. If I choose password never expires, it means that the password will never expire. The password will always be the same. So if I don't choose it, every 40 days, 60 days, Omaid will be asked that, hey Omaid, change your password. Your password is expired. So he will have to change. Account is disabled. If I choose this and say next, finish, you see it is created, but his account is disabled. If I right click on it, I have this option to say enable. Press OK. If I right click on it, I have option disable. Now Omaid will not be able to log in. Correct? So that's how you enable disable. Because sometimes you don't want someone to log into the computers, you can say what? Disable. And if you want them to be able to log in, enable. If the employee leaves the company, you do what? Right click and disable. So employee is not able to log in anymore. So that's how you do it. So this is like basic things, and in our next class we will see this interface more in detail. Don't forget your homework, and I have already explained what your homework is.